And we will move on to the next session, a pathologist perspective. To chair the session, we are inviting Dr. Kaushal Madan, who is the Principal Director and Head of the Unit of the Clinical Hepatology and Max Healthcare New Delhi, and Dr. Sonal Asthana, Head of the Transplant Unit from Aster University, Bangalore. Over to chairpersons.
Thank you, Joy. And I must congratulate the three of you, the course directors, Neeraj, Joy, and Charles, for organizing this fantastic meeting. So I think this is a very interesting session where Dr. Narendra Chaudhary, who's a hepatologist, would be presenting a few case snippets where pathology had a major role to play in managing these patients. And Dr. Mukul Vij, who happens to be a hepatopathologist at Dr. Rela Institute in Chennai, would be putting his, giving his opinion and giving his expert views on the pathological findings. So without wasting much time, over to you, Narendra.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, organizing team. So I will present some interesting cases. When a patient in post-transplant period comes with graft dysfunction, we need to look at these things: infection, biliary complications, vascular complications, CMV, then certain immunological causes and recurrence of original disease. So case 1, 49-year-old male, he underwent living donor liver transplantation in 2015 for alcoholic liver disease. He did well till 2020. He presented with jaundice and raised liver enzymes in Feb 2020, and he said that he takes alcohol occasionally. His investigations were bilirubin 3, AST 193, ALT 256, GGT 437, and alkaline phosphatase 295. So, question. So how do we go in this case? First, we treat as alcoholic hepatitis. Second, we do a liver biopsy, then decide. Third, we do a MRCP because GGT and alkaline phosphatase are high. And fourth, we directly go for ERCP in view of ALP and GGT. Dr. Mukul, you can take over.
Okay, yeah. So can we go back to the slides? I think the poll has come. So liver biopsy, I think maximum people are suggested to do liver biopsy. That's the good choice, I think. I think the hepatologist at Vedanta decided to do the liver biopsy for the patient. So in this biopsy, what we can see that this is the portal area. We can see the portal area here, and this is the parenchyma. We don't see much inflammation in the parenchyma, but definitely in portal area, we can see inflammation. Inflammation is mostly mononuclear. You can see all these are lymphocytes forming an aggregate here. This is a duct, which is largely unremarkable. There is no injury to the duct. This is portal veins. There are a few portal veins in this portal tract, and you can see some injury. There is venulitis here. Rare eosinophils also we can see in this image. Next slide, please. Yeah, again, I think this is some other portal tract, again showing mononuclear inflammation. There is expansion of the portal area. Looks like there is some fibrosis also. Again, duct is largely unremarkable. This is an arteriole unremarkable, and you can see venulitis. You can see that there is venulitis. So there is evidence of portal venulitis here. Next slide, please. This portal tract, so whatever portal tracts we are seeing, they are showing inflammation. Again, mononuclear, predominantly mononuclear inflammation we are seeing, and some venulitis. Ducts appear largely unremarkable everywhere. They are preserved. Then in this slide, we see a centrizonal area. This is a central vein. We can see this terminal hepatic venular, and you can see necrosis. There is confluent necrosis around this area. You can see some inflammation also, mononuclear cells, lymphocyte and histiocytes. We don't see mixed inflammation with necrosis. So confluent necrosis. So there is portal inflammation as well as central lobular inflammation or central perivenulitis, what we say. So at this, if this kind of biopsy findings are there, so there is no alcoholic hepatitis in this patient presently. The patient is having portal as well as central lobular inflammation and necrosis. So we will advise for either we are dealing with late rejection with some hepatitic features because there is some fibrosis also, or we'll always ask in this patient to do the viral and serological workup for the patient.
Thank you. So he was diagnosed as late ACR. Various studies have defined late as 1 month to 1000 days. It happens in 7 to 40% of patients. It is not as benign as early ACR because it can lead to chronic rejection and graft loss. And generally these patients, they need higher immunosuppression. So follow-up, he improved with steroids. He remained abstinent till December 2020. This time he is taking significant alcohol intake. He presented with jaundice again. Bilirubin is 11, AST 184, ALT 24, GGT very high 1100, and alkaline phosphatase 310. So again, options are we treat as alcoholic hepatitis, we treat as rejection, or we do ERCP. Dr. Mukul, please. This is second biopsy done in Feb.
Okay, so again, I think presently we again proceeded with the liver biopsy there. The team took the decision. And what we can see here, we can see a lot of fatty change this time. This is completely different what we saw the previous biopsy. There is remarkable fatty change, looks like 40-50% fatty change. This is macrovascular fatty change because you can see the nucleus at the periphery. This is a hepatocyte in which you can see these large, these clear cell change, which is all lipid, and the nucleus is pushed to the periphery. There is also some amount of bilirubinostasis. We can see this brown discoloration. This is all bile throughout. There is some inflammation also in this biopsy. So there is activities happening in this. Here, this looks like a portal area. Again, there is inflammation in this. So with these findings, I think any other slide is there. Okay, so then this is the higher power view of this case. And what we can see, you can see very typical macrovascular steatosis. Here, this is all macrovascular steatosis, which is pushing this all white color. This is all fat in the liver. And this is macrovascular because you can see a single large vacuole, which is pushing the black nucleus at the periphery. So this is macrovascular steatosis. Very typically, you can see some small vacuole also, some small droplet fatty changes also there. Apart from, you can see a lot of inflammation. So you can see polymorphonuclear leukocytes. You can see all these cells. These are inflammatory cells in the lobule. We can also see Mallory-Denk bodies. Sorry, just go to the previous one. Go to the previous. Yeah, you can also see these ropey eosinophilic inclusion. These are all Mallory-Denk bodies. So there is inflammation, there is fatty change, there is ballooning, and there is Mallory-Denk bodies, which all fits into the diagnosis of this patient as we are dealing with alcoholic steatohepatitis. Next slide, please. And this is the trichome stain of this case, and you can see extensive fibrosis. You can see these blue color fibers. This is all signifying sinusoidal pericellular fibrosis throughout the liver. And this is the portal area at the top. You can see at the top, you can see 11 o'clock. This is the portal area in which you can see an artery and a duct. And there is fibrosis extension to the lobule. So we are dealing with alcoholic steatohepatitis with activity as well as scarring. Thank you.
So this is his follow-up. So in Jan, bilirubin was 11.9. It increased gradually to 23. And on 16th of, we did biopsy here when bilirubin was 11 point something, but we increased steroids a little bit. We continued with standard immunosuppression, but it increased up to 27. He is lucky that it is decreasing, and bilirubin is 6 on last follow-up of 15th of April. So liver biopsy in patients with recidivism. This is recently accepted paper, not in print yet. So we did on-demand biopsy in 14 patients with significant alcohol intake after transplantation. Histological diagnosis were alcoholic hepatitis in half of these patients. Some of patients had acute cellular rejection and chronic rejection also, and there was cirrhosis in 2 patients. 5 patients with some form of rejection, they were non-compliant to immunosuppression. 6 of these 14 patients died. So recidivism is associated with significant mortality. Case 2, 55-year-old male, transplantation for NASH-related acute on chronic liver failure. History of steroid boluses for acute cellular rejection at 4 weeks. After boluses, at 2 weeks, he presented with raised enzymes, bilirubin normal, AST 196, ALT 341, alkaline phosphatase 166, GGT 431. In workup, Doppler was normal, MRCP was normal, viral serology is negative, TAC is okay. He was on TAC, MMF and steroids in decreasing doses. So question 2, how should we proceed in this case? We increase tacrolimus, we increase dose of steroids, we repeat a biopsy, or we add everolimus because he had recent acute cellular rejection.
I can't vote, but I would vote for biopsy. For some reason, I can't vote.
Most have voted for biopsy only, 64%.
Just because it is a pathologist session does not mean that answer is biopsy.
So we did a biopsy. I added only one slide. There is no significant inflammation and these dots are CMV IHC positive. It is difficult to pick up CMV CMV hepatitis is very rare. It is GI involvement is most common out of all tissue invasive CMV disease. Hepatitis is quite rare, but this case general tendency is to increase immunosuppression or to increase steroids. So this case shows that biopsy is really important. So generally CMV occurs at viremia. Tissue invasive disease is uncommon. Tissue invasive diseases associated with higher viral counts. What we see, disseminated focal hepatitis. If this picture is there, we should think of CMV. Sometimes we can see inclusion bodies, but immunohistochemistry is more sensitive than inclusion bodies. Case 3, 50-year-old male, cryptogenic cirrhosis, underwent living donor liver transplantation. He had anosmotic biliary stricture and it was remodeled in follow-up. So follow-up at 6 months after transplantation, bilirubin slightly raised, AST and ALT absolutely normal, but his TAC was 2.4 only. He couldn't come for a follow-up and bilirubin increased to 15, AST ALT remained still low, less than 2 times upper limit of normal. TAC was okay given 1 year post-transplant period. MRCP was done because sometimes stricture recur or there may be subsegmental strictures. MRCP showed it significant biliary dilatation. So ERCP was done. At the time of ERCP, bilirubin was 18, but after 3 days of ERCP, it increased to 23. No significant elevation of enzymes, Doppler okay, CMV negative, viral markers all negative. Dr. Mukul, please.
Yeah. So this is the biopsy. What we see here, we can see this biopsy. There are these very pink areas, and these are little pale areas around around central vein. This is the portal area. In the lower side, you can see the portal area. In this upper side, this is the central vein. You can see a central vein here. There is some inflammation in the portal area, looks like, and there is around the central vein, there is some paler area. Next slide. I can do that. Okay. So if you, this is a higher power, this is the portal area, what you can see at 5 o'clock here, and you can see 2 ducts here. They look injured. This is an arteriole here. This is an arteriole. There's ducts looks injured, and you can see at one part of the duct, you see loss of nuclei. In both the ducts, you can only see these blue nuclei at one end only. Other end did not show any nuclei. There is mild inflammation in the portal area. In the parenchyma, you can see a lot of ballooning of these hepatocytes. You can see the ballooning here, and there is cholestasis also. And there is some neutrophils here in the upper right hand side near the probably central vein is there. So what we are seeing very mild inflammation in the portal area, largely any inflammation, looks like a burnt out portal tract. We can see a duct which is showing atrophic or dysplastic changes. In the parenchyma, we can see ballooning and cholestasis, all pointing towards that, to me presently, that we are going towards, we are seeing a case of early chronic rejection. We are saying early because there is no duct loss. Next slide. Yeah. So again, again around the central area, you can see some inflammation, lot of ballooning and cholestasis. There is some areas, some inflammation and necrosis also. So, and bilirubinostasis there. So this all confirms the finding that we are dealing with the case of early chronic rejection.
I have a question, Dr. Mukul. For the slide, the central veins are looking a little prominent. What criteria do you use to say to sort of determine whether the central veins are actually prominent in a particular patient? And I mean, because a venous obstruction is quite, I mean, probably as likely, if not, early on after a transplant.
Central veins, I think they are of quite variable sizes. So it's very difficult to comment that until we see veno-occlusive feature. If we see any venous injury, either we see some fibroplasia or some intimal fibrosis around it, or we see congestion around it. But otherwise, terminal aortic veins are of various sizes. They can have fibrous wall also, without fibrous wall, but this looks largely unremarkable. As such, there is no congestion in the vein also around it. So very doesn't look like that they are histologically, there doesn't look any unusual histologically.
So chronic rejection also, although it says chronic, but it can happen anytime, but generally it takes several years. It happens in 2 to 3% of liver transplantation. After addition of mTOR inhibitors, response is there in 50 to 60%. In non-responders, prognosis is very poor because they are susceptible to infection and generally they need retransplantation. So follow-up is bilirubin decreased to 1.5 milligram after 3 months of everolimus. He has troublesome inguinal hernia. We plan to do surgery after stopping everolimus. So conclusion, post-liver transplant, graft dysfunction, several reasons are there. It is always better to have histology if other causes are ruled out. We routinely discuss case with pathologists, even we go and see biopsies. A common theme in long-term transplant patients is slightly raised AST and ALT. Generally, we attribute it to fatty liver, but on biopsy, we have identified several de novo autoimmune hepatitis. So in unexplained rise of enzymes or graft dysfunction, we should do a biopsy. Thank you. Dr. Mukul, you have some slides.
Yeah, I think it's time is there to discuss. I have few slides of typical allograft. If time is there, I should do or I should.
No, you can carry on, Dr.
Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So, this few slides I have, just stop me whenever I think you think that we are overgoing. So this is to start with, because I think there are a lot of trainees here.
Mukul sir, can you please put it on a slideshow? Yes.
Yeah, this okay?
Yeah, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So, excuse me. Yeah. So this is, I have just started to, this is a normal liver. We can see a lobule. This is a central vein in the center, and you can see portal tract at the periphery. And for the trainees, a portal tract, we talk about 3 structures. There's a portal vein, which is the largest in size. You have an arteriole here. I don't know, can you see my cursor, or still it's not working?
That's working.
And there is bile duct here. So there's a triad, but you can have dyads also in 80% of the portal tract, and you can have more than 3 structures. You can see 15, 20 structures also in many of the large portal tracts. So start with I have few slides on for these allograft dysfunction. Pathology is gold standard. So it's important to know about what exactly happening in the graft. And in our center, biopsies are routinely done for any cause of graft dysfunction. And only after that decision are taken most of the time. And in this case, I think, especially in South India, where we do disease donor liver transplantation, we can have ischemia reperfusion or perfusion injury, which is the damage to the graft from the harvest, when you harvest up to implantation. And this damage can lead to graft dysfunction. Generally, it happens within first month, within 3 weeks. And what if you happen to do a biopsy of this, and always there is a confusion that you have rejection or not. In these cases, you will see central lobular changes would be there. You will see ballooning and you will see cholestasis. They usually resolve by itself. In severe cases, you can also see a lot of microvascular stenosis. You can see this severe dysfunction with ribinostasis, because there is mitochondrial dysfunction because of ischemia in these cases and injury. You can see microvascular stenosis. And again, the fatty change when in disease donor as well as in living, amount of fatty change is important. And we know that usually we take the graft less than 30 to 40% of in disease donors. If we take a graft which is moderate to severe stenosis, probably more than 50%, we can have primary non-function. And this is usually again because of ischemia reperfusion injury. And when so much fat is there in the graft, it accentuates the ischemic injury. And like this graft in which there is extensive fat, more than 50% of fat is there. There is primary non-function, and you can see lipopiliosis. You can see these big spaces around. There's complete necrosis and these big fatty spaces, these clear spaces, and necrosis here. So it's important to, so that's why biopsies are extremely important to decide, especially in disease donor center, the amount of fat. Another thing which can cause dysfunction is a small for size of total hyperperfusion syndrome. And again, biopsy, biopsy helps in some of these cases. If you happen to do a biopsy in these cases, if you take a liver which is of insufficient volume, you can see a portal hemorrhage, this portal area. Again, the issue is with, we are dealing with rejection or we are dealing with small for size of portal hyperperfusion. So you can have this portal hemorrhage in these cases, and you can also see areas of infarction. Many times you can see this with rejection. It occurs. You can also have this rejection going on in the biopsy, as well as small for size features of injury because of small for size of portal hyperperfusion. And it's important to let the clinicians know that both the injuries we can see in the biopsy, so they treat rejection also as well as they do something for the small for size. Thrombosis, again, it's going down. The incidence is going down. And if you happen to see hepatic venous thrombosis, I think with radiology only you have to do a biopsy. We don't do routine biopsies, but if a biopsy is done, sometimes you will see a lot of necrosis, especially in the central lobular, because there's more ischemic prone area around the central vein. This necrosis around central vein, you can see hemorrhage and necrosis consistent with hepatic venous thrombosis. You can also see large geographic areas of necrosis. If you happen to see an allograft which is removed or retransplantation, you can see large areas of necrosis in these cases. Outflow is very, very rare. Again, you will see congestion in case of outflow. It's extremely rare to see venous outflow issues in these biopsies. But if you happen to see because recurrent urticaria or some other reason and osmotic issues, you will see congestion and hepatocyte dropout. Most common is, I think we need to be aware about, is T-cell mediated rejection, because up to 25% of cases in most of the biopsy dysfunction, graft dysfunction, is because of acute cellular rejection. And the typical, if you see these biopsies, you will see typical blue areas and pink areas. Blue area is the portal area in which you will see a lot of inflammation, and lobule, which does not show any which show any remarkable finding. So these findings, if you see in the low power, you can suggest that we are seeing rejection. If you go into high power, the typical features, the triad, you can see a duct with injury. This is ductulitis, mixed inflammation, lymphocytes, blasts, a lot of eosinophils also with ductulitis. This is a central vein with central venulitis. You can see the lymphocytes in the subendothelial space and necrosis around it, and you can see portal venulitis. So classical triad is there. This is the typical severe rejection, but you need to see 2 out of these 3 features to diagnose rejection. You can also grade it and also set it about mild, moderate, or severe rejection. Then another thing is atypical or plasma cell rejection, which is also known as de novo hepatitis. And in this case, you will see a lot of plasma cells in the portal area with evidence of interface activity. You can see these plasma cells. These are all around more than 50% plasma cells are there. And this is usually a cause of late graft dysfunction after 6 months of it, but rarely you can see at 3 or 4 months in these cases also. And these cases can show a lot of fibrosis also. And the treatment is same as rejection. You have to treat with steroid. Antibody mediated rejection, it was virtually not existent a few years back, because there was no evidence of rejection even in cases of cross-match positive patient or even ABO incompatible transplant. We hardly see rejection. But now we know some cases of early allograft dysfunction can be attributed to antibody mediated rejection. And the main thing what you listen from anyone from pathologist diagnosing is he will talk about microvasculitis. And what is microvasculitis? Microvasculitis is different from venulitis, what you see in a case of T-cell mediated rejection. In microvasculitis, you will see this portal vein would show a thrombus with kind of lot of inflammatory cell in the interlumen, blocking kind of thrombus it form. You can also see fibrinoid material here. This is a case of ABO compatible transplant, which was DSA positive, and C4D also showed expression. This is C4D here. And this is a case of ABO incompatible transplant we recently saw, in which there was rebound high titers, which led to acute AMR. And you can see a lot of inflammatory cells inside and fibrin material. So this is microvasculitis is different from the typical venulitis when you talk about T-cell mediated rejection. And if any pathologist or anyone sees this kind of finding, we should always do C4D and request for DSA or titers in case of ABO incompatible transplants. Chronic rejection, again, it's now very rare, very rare, and now we don't see early rejection like what we happen to see earlier, like acute vanishing bile duct syndrome. What we see now is late rejection, usually happened after 6 months or 1 year or 2 to 3 years of the graft, basically because of non-compliance. And the two typical features is you will see duct loss. In this, you can see an arterial and portal area hairs in both these portal tract. You don't see any duct. And if you happen to see an allograft, if a repeat transplant is done, you will see this kind of foam cell intimal arteriopathy, which is occluding the lumen. These are the typical features of chronic rejection. Biliary complications, again, are common, and biopsy will help. Radiology will also help. You will see a stricture because of anastomotic or non-anastomotic causes. And if you see in these cases, basically you will see expansion, edema, mild inflammation, and ductal reaction in the graft. So these findings will suggest that we are dealing with biliary obstruction, which is a common problem, and not rejection. Most of the time is differential is between if you are seeing rejection or something else. Infections again are common, as Dr. Narendra also told, and sepsis remain one of the most common infection in the graft. And what you see gram-negative is a secondary. You can see secondary changes in the graft, which is you can see these bile plugs in the ductules, marginal ductules filled with this bile plug, and a lot of neutrophils which also infiltrate the bile duct. Again, in this case, sepsis is important, and biopsy will reveal these findings. And again, HSP, you can see HSP, which is cause of early gallbladder dysfunction. And this is again very important. It happened at 7 to 10 days or 15 days of transplant, severe transaminitis. And it's important not to treat it with steroid and do a biopsy. And if you don't, because if you don't treat, then mortality is very high. Probably, I think 90 or 100% mortality is there if you don't treat this patient. And typically, if you happen to see this is a biopsy which was done at 7th or 8th day with allograft dysfunction, you can see this extensive necrosis and dense eosinophilic inclusions here, consistent with finding of HSP hepatitis. In this patient, PCR was also positive, and he was treated, and he is well now. Again, if you do pediatric transplantation, EBV recurrence is also you can see, especially because many of the pediatric recipients are naive for EBV. They don't have any primary infection. And when it happens, if you happen to see hepatitis, you will, again, you need to differentiate. You are seeing EBV hepatitis or rejection. And again, the EBV hepatitis, the action is happening in the lobular area. You can see these sinusoids filled with these lymphocytes throughout, which are basically B and as well as T lymphocytes also you see. And you don't see mixed inflammation. That's how you distinguish them. And again, you can do follow up with serology and reduce the immunosuppression in these cases. Fungal infections are very, very rare in liver. If happens, if you happen to see a biopsy, you can, aspergillus is most common. Sometimes you can also see zygomycosis. This is the liver which is showing zygomycosis infection. You can see these broad septa. Rarely tuberculosis we have seen sometimes, especially because of the activation because of immunosuppression activation of the primary foci in lung. And again, this was in this biopsy, this was a referral biopsy from outside. In this suspected rejection was suspected and turned out to be and we saw granulomas everywhere throughout with caseation also. It was also AFB positive. So again, you these kind of finding, and in the, I think, CT or ultrasound was done, nothing else was there. So again, this is again biopsy only proven to be helpful for the patient, and TB treatment was started. Hep B and Hep C can occur. Hep C doesn't occur because of direct related. Hep B can rarely occur, in which you happen to see globular hepatitis, and sometimes when in severe cases you can also see fibrosing cholestatic hepatitis with ductal reaction, inflammation, cholestasis, and ballooning. Hep C doesn't occur. Sometimes we see some hepatitis in SCV patient in which SCV RNA is negative. We don't know this is some other cause of hepatitis. All of the markers would be negative. There's some unusual idiopathic hepatitis happening, or there is some low level of RNA which is not detectable by the PCR what we do, which is causing some kind of lobular hepatitis in this patient. Very few cases sometimes you will see, and very difficult to diagnose. The Hep B, again, rarely you can see Hep B, and again, this will happen. If this happen, again, the issue would be either you are dealing with rejection or Hep B. Few cases, if you see, and it really mimics rejection most of the time. The cases which I have seen, it looks like rejection only because it can also show lymphocytes and eosinophils and histiocytes around, some interface activity, and maybe some central vein activity also, but there would be a lot of lobular activity, and usually IgM would be positive in these cases. RNA, whatever, apart from one case, outside referral, all of our RNA was negative, but in this case, RNA was negative. It started on ribavirin and was okay, I think. Dinesh case only. And rare case, I think, which because we do a lot of transplant or plasmapheresis for especially this yellow phosphorus or retinol poisoning, and this is also a recurrence which we recently described, in which cases shows in which all most of the time there is issue, is there rejection happening or something else or infection. In these cases, we have seen a lot of macrovascular stenosis, microvascular stenosis also throughout the liver. 100% of the hepatocyte shows fatty change, sometimes less also, and you will see a lot of necrosis. Sometimes when fatty change is less, you see a lot of necrosis, which is not centrilobular or periportal, which is in the mid zone. So these, if you see these kind of findings with cholestasis, if you in a biopsy, then you need to do plasmapheresis. And all these 3 patients which we have described, they all recovered with plasmapheresis, I think. And rarely fatty change occur, especially in case of FIC1 deficiency. Again, think of rejection, you do ultrasound, you see fatty change. This is the case of PFIC type 1 fibrosis. At 4th week ultrasound, there was dysfunction, ultrasound released fatty change, and biopsy shows lot of 70-80% of fatty change in this case. Again, there was no rejection in the biopsy in this patient. And rarely, I think, drug-induced etiologies are also important. We always need to keep in mind. Thank you. Thank you.
Sonal, can you take up from here?
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Dr. Mukul. That was an excellent overview. Thank you also, Dr. Narendra, for giving us a very good sort of coverage of rejection at different stages and, clinical perspective of the confounding factors. I think this was actually a masterclass in several ways of what can happen in an allograft dysfunction. So I thank you both for it. I have certainly learned a lot. I'm not sure about questions because we are 15 minutes over time. So I think what I'll do is people can just type in their questions and perhaps the panelists can just stick around and answer them, on the text rather than take up more of the presentation time, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
So, and on the behalf of all the organizers and my co-chair, I'd like to thank both Dr. Narendra and Dr. Mukul for taking the time and putting together this excellent tutorial. That's helpful for all of us. Thank you.